Remsky.
Here.
DeVore Leonard.
Here.
Osterholm.
Here.
Also present is Planning and Zoning Administrator Denise Swinger.
Okay, we have, just reviewing the agenda, we'll be looking at the minutes, communications. Gavin, we're assuming you'll have a report. We have a place for citizens' comments, and that's for comments for anything that is not on our agenda. And then we have 2 public hearings, and at those hearings, we'll have a place for comments for anybody who wants to comment. Then old business and new business and agenda planning. So we'll start with the review of the minutes. I'm just going to ask, does anybody have any corrections?
No.
Okay. Could we get a motion to approve?
So moved.
And a second?
I second.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, we'll go on to communications. I know we received one from Matt Raska about the zoning, and did we receive any others?
That is it.
Okay, great. Then Gavin?
Yeah, so it seems like the relevant items are that there are some zoning fee updates that will be coming before council at our next meeting. There are also utility rate increases that will come before council. We've already discussed it some, but that'll be coming before council. And then it's related to the utility increases, and then also the discussion around the reciprocal tax, which isn't necessarily relevant here, but there's a town hall tomorrow at 7 p.m., and there's both an in-person and a Zoom option. And Judy or Denise, jump in if there's anything else that Judy has told me that I have forgotten.
What's a reciprocal tax?
The reciprocal tax is, currently we have a credit where basically, so I'll take myself as an example. If I work in Columbus, and Columbus has a higher income tax rate than Yellow Springs does, I pay my income tax in in Columbus, and then Yellow Springs gives me a full 100% credit so that I don't pay any income tax in Yellow Springs.
As long as it's less
As long as it's less than.
in Yellow Springs.
So the discussion on the table is the prospect of changing that credit from, right now it's a 100% credit. There are communities around the state that do some percentage of that, so it could be 75% or 50% or 25% credit, or will there be changes in reciprocal taxes that are due for people who work in other municipalities?
All right, thank you.
And Gavin, the town hall, is that on the zoning fees and the utility rates?
The town hall is on the utility rates and the reciprocal tax.
Okay, on the okay, great, thank you. And what time is that meeting?
At 7 p.m.
Okay, thank you.
And I am going to apologize. You did have another communication, and I did not list it, and it was regarding 507 South High Street, and it was a neighbor saying they have absolutely no issue with it whatsoever.
Yes.
My apologies.
Okay, are there any other committee reports? Anybody on the committee that has a report? Okay, if not, then we'll move on to citizens' comments. Is there anybody who wants to make a comment of something that is not on our agenda? Okay, then we'll go on to our first public hearing, a conditional use application. Denise, would you like to talk about it?
So this is a conditional use application for a home occupation. As you know, home occupations, sometimes we do not require a conditional use hearing, but if you're having clients in your home, or you're wanting to put a sign up, those kinds of things, then it does require a planning commission hearing. This is for 507 South High Street. She is going to be doing psychotherapy sessions, and she's she meets all the criteria. She's doing it like 2.5 days a week, maybe have 3 to 8 clients, but half of those or more are going to be through Zoom. So she might only have a few clients a week, and she's got plenty of parking at the front. It is in the public right-of-way, but it's still designated for those houses because they have gravel in front of all those houses along that section of South High.
And is it Bierhorst? Is she here today? No.
Oh, Is there anybody representing her?
A question that I had, maybe you can answer it, Denise,
Oh, dear.
because she's
Never had that happen before.
practicing,
Can't do it.
we can't do it.
We can't do the meeting.
Okay.
No, sorry. Yeah, she has to be present.
Okay, then I want to ask my question. Okay, then we will,
Yeah.
Okay.
And so she knew that she was obligated to be here, or a representative? Yeah, okay.
I mean, I let her know, and she got the notice like everybody else did, so,
yeah.
yeah, we talked to her via email.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering.
Can I say something, just off the top? When we came in, they did say that the
Yeah.
email went out about the water here, and that everybody was told the meeting
You told her,
was
right?
canceled.
You sent
Not
a thing?
today, not today, I mean, no.
You sent a thing saying we're holding a meeting.
Oh, yeah, she got the, I'm sorry for interrupting you.
Oh, that's okay, I just thought maybe it was possible that she got an email saying that due to the water that.
Would you want to come up and talk? We
No,
could-
No.
But we sent a thing saying there's a meeting.
Yeah, the email
You
was
sent her the same email
that
you sent
their
us?
meeting was on.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But I did not send an email to her today, is what I'm saying, at all. So she
Do you
was
have a phone number? We can get her here for the second hearing.
Let's see if her phone number is on her form.
away, that's not going to be her fault.
That would be not cool.
And we could just do the other hearing first.
You're not here to represent Ellen Bierhorst, are you? Okay, it's worth a shot.
We took a shot in the dark on that
There
one.
is found the-
Yeah, she. Okay, we will just sort of wait a minute while Denise is making that call.
Might want to think about who you want to nominate. Some exciting times here
Yes.
for your chair and your vice chair.
Well, how about that weather, huh? I mean,
1 week it's trying to kill us, now it's trying to be nice to us.
yeah,
At least we're not in California right now.
it'd be terrible.
Hey,
Absolutely.
California needs to be careful what they wish for. We're in a drought, let's get some rain.
Yeah, not all at once.
Can they pump any of that water back into the groundwater?
You would think they would try to figure out a way to save it.
Because it's, obviously too much for them to use right now.
I think what they really need to do is really hit the rain up there where the Hoover Dam is and fill that lake back up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You see they're talking about building a desalination plant in Mexico?
That would be smart.
to Pump tons of water to Arizona.
I wasn't in Mature, so.
Okay. Then we will go ahead with our next conditional use application, which is for Millworks. Alexis Kip has submitted a conditional use application for a tattoo shop at 305 North Walnut Street.
Okay, I know this is, there's two Lexi Kips. So are you both here? Okay. I was getting so confused.
Very unusual.
There's two.
Two, yes.
Okay.
And they're both opening this up together, so.
Okay, with the same name.
Wow. So, as you know, we just went through the final PUD with Millworks, and so now the underlying zoning includes B2 and a few things in B1, as well as the I1. This tattoo studio is something that is now a conditional use, and so they're here tonight for this. It meets the requirements. There's, they're going to be by appointment only, so it's not really an issue with parking so much. And I've provided you with the description of the place at Millworks where they're going to have their office. And their hours are not like 10 to 2, Tuesday through Friday. So it's not going to be a super busy operation where there needs to be concern about traffic and things like that. And I recommend its approval, so.
Okay. So should we go ahead and hear from them first before or do we have our
If
public
they-
hearing first?
Often you'll ask if there's anyone on council who's got questions for Denise.
Yeah.
And then you can go ahead and
Them.
open up the public hearing. If they've got specific questions for the applicant, then that can also happen prior to the public hearing.
Okay. Anybody have questions for Denise? Okay, would someone like to come up and state your name? Anybody who comes up, do state your name, and then just tell us anything you want to.
Okay, I am Lexi Kip, and this is my wife, Lexi Kip, as well. We are married, and we are super excited. Thank you for considering us, for this opportunity. But yeah, we run a single needle tattoo business, and we would be so excited, to be in this community. I grew up in Enon, so semi-local. I went to Greene High School, and when my wife and I met, this was one of the first places that I actually brought her to go on a date, and she fell in love with it instantly. And it's just very wholesome here, and we feel that and love it, and you can feel it from everyone around us. And we're super excited. We would love to be a part of the community, and we do plan to buy or build a home here and just put our roots here, stay here for as long as we live. But I'd be happy to answer any questions that you guys had. And again, thank you, for considering us for this opportunity.
Any questions for Alexis? I don't think we have any questions. Thank you.
Sounds good. Of course.
Pretty straightforward.
Yep.
Yeah. Do you have a question?
No, it's kind of
So I
straightforward.
had a couple questions. I'm just
Yeah.
sort of curious.
Uh-huh.
Your hours are rather limited.
Yes.
4 days a week,
Yeah.
just 4 hours.
Uh-huh.
So maybe it doesn't matter, but I'm just curious.
Yeah.
Do you anticipate expanding at some point?
As far as the hours we work, probably not. So we both got into this business to kind of, have more of a work-life balance. So our whole goal was to not, work more than, we'd be at home and enjoying, everything else. So I think we'll probably stick to, those limited hours. We do accommodate certain appointments and stuff sometimes on off days. It just kind of depends on what aligns with us and our clients. But standardly, we will definitely probably be working the 10 to 2.
Just wondering.
Yeah.
Did you have another question?
Related, also not really pertinent because it wouldn't affect the application per se, but it looks like it's a bit of a larger space than you need. So I guess it's realistically in the future, if you wanted to just have more going on, you have the space for it. But I don't think that at all affects what we need to be judging.
And the hours that she says, that you say, they don't, limit her if she wanted to expand the hours or the days or.
Right.
Right.
Nobody's checking up on it.
And it's not in a home, so which has more restrictive hours and times, but no.
Right.
Okay. Thank you
Awesome.
very much.
Yeah, of course.
Alexis.
Thank you.
Like,
Okay, then I'm going to go ahead and open the public hearing. If anybody would like to say anything, either in support or whatever, go ahead and come up and state your name and give your comments.
Hello, I'm Allison Moody. I'm the property owner. I am here to show my support for the Alexises. This space is going to work really well for them. It's upstairs, kind of down like a back hallway, so there's no exposure for people walking in. So for security reasons, it works really well, and I think they'll just be a great addition to town.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I want to say something. I am Jamie Tackett, and I'm this is other Lexi and then my Lexi. So that's my daughter. And I just want to say they are fabulous people. They are going to be fabulous here in Yellow Springs. And I also think this would be important to know. People actually travel to them. They're currently now in Vandalia, working there, and people are coming out of state, driving hours, flying to get a tattoo from them. which is amazing, and also I think is an opportunity to have somebody come here, maybe rent out Airbnb, go have some dinner, and stuff like that, and do some local shopping, and that's it.
Okay. Thank you very much. Anyone else?
I am Lexi number two's mother. And I actually have just come to know Yellow Springs since I've been together, so for the last 3 or 4 years. And I love it here. It's a very nice town, very, very welcoming. And I am super excited for them to have an opportunity to come in front of you and actually start working in your area. And I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments? If not, then we'll close the comments. Any other questions?
Do proud moms factor into our,
They
You bet
should.
they do.
okay.
Well, I'm going to make a motion to approve the conditional use application for the tattoo shop at 305 North Walnut Street.
I'll second that.
Great.
Just pick somebody there. All right. Greene.
Yes.
DeVore Leonard.
Yes?
Zaremski.
Yes.
Osterholm.
Yes.
Stiles.
Yes.
Thank you.
Congratulations. Is it? I don't know. Okay. I'm just going to check. Ellen?
Yes.
Great, okay. We thought we had skipped over you. We thought you weren't there, and we were going to have to wait till next month. But since you're here then, that's okay. That's okay. It worked out fine. We've gotten our tattoo shop approved. And so then we'll go ahead with our other conditional use, which is the residential conditional use for home occupation permit.
Okay, which as I started to say, Ellen's home occupation does meet the criteria. She is using a dining room area that meets the requirements for square footage based on the size of the house. And she's only planning to have clients 2.5 days a week in Yellow Springs. And of those clients, probably half of them or more are actually via Zoom. So it might just be 2 or 3 clients, 3 to 5 clients per day that might come to the house. She does have parking in the front available. It's on-street parking, but as I mentioned, the gravel is there and is used by the homes along that area. She does not intend to use a sign, which is an option that she could have if she wanted. And staff recommends approval.
Any questions for Denise? Okay, Ellen, would you like to come up and just come up and state your name and then anything you want to say?
I'm, Ellen Bierhorst. I live at 507 South High Street. I think Ms. Swinger has said everything. I don't think there'd be any impact on the neighborhood whatsoever for my very small, modest psychotherapy and Alexander technique practice. I'm not sure what else I could say.
That's fine. Does anyone have any questions for Ellen? I don't think we do, so thank you very much.
Thank you for Yellow Springs.
Okay, then we will open the public hearing. If anybody would like to come up and make any comments about Ellen's application for the home psychotherapy sessions. Any comments? Okay, then we will close the public hearing. If anyone has any questions, no? Then would somebody like to make a motion? Okay, I will make a motion to approve the conditional use application for home occupation permit offering psychotherapy sessions at 507 South High Street.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Scott.
All right, Osterholm,
Yes.
Zaremski,
Yes.
Greene,
Yes.
DeVore Leonard,
Yes?
Stiles.
Yes. Congratulations. That was very easy.
Tonight's theme is therapeutic.
And you folks do not have to hang around for the rest of the meeting if you don't
Yeah, because we're going to make
wish
sausage now, and nobody likes to see
partake
that
of that
made.
excitement.
Do we have any old business?
No.
No old business. So our new business is, we need a nomination for chair and vice chair for the Planning Commission.
Thank you. So,
So just to fill folks in.
Fill everybody in, yeah.
To fill folks in, for health reasons, Frank would prefer to step back into an alternate position. My recommendation to folks is that Scott be interviewed for the full position. I think there's general agreement with that approach. I have placed an ad in the Yellow Springs News for another alternate position because we're one short anyway. So that's a bit of change that is likely to occur. It is, I would say, the odds are good that Scott will come aboard as a full member, but they would like to put him through the little interview process and then get council approval for that. So I guess what I'm saying is, right now, I don't know that Scott can be nominated for chair or vice chair because that's a little iffy. If you folks want to push it off to wait for that decision, that's fine too. We don't have to rush this, but if you want to move ahead, you can go ahead and do
So
nominations.
I have a question. I hadn't thought of this before, but, so we have 5. What, are we allowed to hold a meeting if we have fewer than 5?
Get to
Need
3.
minimum, okay.
Yeah. So, yeah, you just have to have a quorum in order to meet.
Okay.
Okay. I'll nominate Susan for the chairman.
I'll second.
She's doing a great job.
Thank you.
Second.
are we doing thirds? I'm going to third that.
Second.
All right, fourth that.
Yeah. Susan, are you okay with that?
I'm okay with it. You know, if somebody else would like to, I'm very willing to.
Well, could you not
Somebody
tell?
else, but I'm okay with it.
Did you see anyone hinting that they wanted to go a different way with that?
I see everybody taking one step back.
Yeah, take one, have the volunteer please step forward, and everyone else steps back.
We'll go ahead and roll call on that then. Osterholm,
Yes.
DeVore Leonard,
Yes?
Greene,
Yes.
Zaremski,
Yes.
Stiles.
I guess I'll say yes. I was maybe if I should
No,
refrain.
you're fine. You can say yes.
In democracy, you are allowed to vote for yourself.
You are concurring with the wishes of your colleagues, I would say.
So now we need a vice chair. Is there somebody who would like to be a vice chair?
I'll be the vice
Stephen?
chair.
Great. I nominate Stephen Greene to be the vice chair.
I'll second that.
Stephen Greene, Scott Osterholm, seconds. Any objections or other nominations that you want to compete? I don't see any. All right, looks pretty civil. Zaremski.
Pardon?
We're voting.
Did you say me?
Yes.
Yeah, I did,
Yes.
I did.
Yeah.
I did. Sorry, my voice
Usually
kind of
I'm
cracked there.
last,
Well, I do change
yes.
things up. I try to keep you on your
Okay.
toes.
I guess.
Greene,
Yes.
Osterholm,
Yes.
DeVore Leonard,
Yes?
Stiles.
Yes. Great. Okay, we have that taken care of.
Nicely done.
And we're, within this group at the table, we're able to make the decision for Frank to step down to alternate?
No, but I did. I just made it unilaterally, and I put it past, I asked Carmen and Gavin about it, but I put it through the council president, because we, I think, want to retain Frank, and
Yes.
Frank doesn't want meetings to go awry because he's not able to do it for a while. He's
Yeah.
just in a long recovery process, but he wants to keep his hand in there and be able to
Right.
come back when he's,
Okay.
as he's able. So,
Okay, next on new business then is looking at Planning Commission goals for 2023. And Judy has given us several things that we've brought up. We'd like to talk about Keith Sally, zoning reform, examination of the zoning code, parking. Are there other things that we want to look at for the next year?
Well, and I would say this. Many things will get thrown at you. That's what happens. I think someone brought up park.
Oh, I mentioned the master park plan.
Master plan. Like, I mean, these things come along. So,
Which hasn't been updated in 25 years.
and there's a reason for that.
So, yeah. And I'm just thinking, rather than it falling just on Johnny's shoulders to try to figure it out, I mean,
Absolutely.
it could be something that Planning Commission could help him with.
Wait, and what item?
It's the Park and Rec Master Plan. It had been done in 1998, but I think, it's well overdue, and especially, he and I discussed the fact that, just like the comprehensive land use plan, when at least you get something down in writing, it gives you that vision for looking for grants and other opportunities. He's always trying to make the parks better, and especially with the swimming pool, the ball diamonds, all of that.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely.
The dog park.
The dog
Yeah,
park.
the dog
yeah.
park.
Right.
So you've got a few things, and I don't know whether you want to, how you want to go about it, because the next piece, and I should have put them together. On agenda planning, you've got Planning Commission Ethics and Zoning Code Workshop. I spoke with Amy today. She's like, that's too much in one ball. We can spend an hour on ethics easily, so that's just too much all at once. Her suggestion was, why don't you go ahead and set a meeting time for the Neighbors for More Neighbors people to present to Planning Commission. Then Planning Commission can ask questions of that group, ask questions of Denise, whoever's, gather your information, and then based on that information, you may say, well, Denise, we'd like you to bring this text amendment, or we aren't interested in text amendments, or we'd like to revise this whole chapter, or, I mean, there are many directions you can go with it, but you'll have the expertise at the table to bounce questions off after you hear the presentation.
And could we consider having like a public meeting to get some input if we're looking at any zoning?
You will have to have.
Okay, good.
A public hearing for any
A
text
public hearing,
amendment.
but I'm talking about like a public meeting where we have people come in and informally talk about, like we've had them for other things that have come up.
A work session?
Well, Amy advised against a work session because her view of it was, there's a process laid out in the zoning code for text amendments. And it is that if you have a request from a group for text amendments, you hear that request, which would be the presentation, and then you consider that request. If you decide, well, we want to just get input from different people about what they all think should be different with the zoning code, that is not a direct response to a request from a specific group to make specific sorts of changes. That's something you could also consider at a different point. But I will also say that unless you're contemplating wholesale change to the zoning code, I would not go there.
Okay.
Because if you pull one string, the whole sweater starts unraveling. And you had to be ready with consultants and money and time and all the things that it's going to take to, in fact, holistically respond to, different kinds of requests for change.
What I understood from council, based on what I said to them, was that they weren't interested in a complete overhaul of the zoning code, because I said there's no way at staff level we can take on that kind of a project. We'd have to put out, requests for proposals and get some professionals to help us with that. They weren't really interested in that. So I think we need to hear from this group. We can kind of, drill down on some specifics, and we may find it's just a little bit of tweaking here or there.
Sure.
Or, we can take it, have a subcommittee of Planning Commission, you can go that route and have other people join that as well. I mean, this could take some time, but, I mean, there's options. We just, for right now, it's just a matter of let's having them present, and then we'll take it from there.
I think that's what probably everybody would like to hear them present. Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah.
Gary, did you have something?
Yeah, and I think I'd like to add on that, because I've actually have read a bit lately on similar type of topics. I think, what this group has been talking about is somewhat of if I could call it this, a philosophical change in how you approach neighborhoods. And I don't think that can be done as just a simple adjustment in existing zoning codes, because it's sort of rather different mindset on how you put together neighborhoods. And what ties in with that a little bit is I've been involved in the Active Transport Committee, and I've now read some interesting things. There's actually a movement in the country moving away, and it's small, and there's little experiments all over the place. I actually just read about a couple up in Cleveland, moving away from our traditional, what I'll call, automotive-oriented developments to transit-oriented developments. You familiar with that term?
Yeah.
It's more of that's more of an urban thing.
Urbanism.
Yeah, but even then here, as I'm seeing in the Active Transport Group, it's sort of like, what could be done to neighborhoods to make them more pedestrian-friendly, more so than bicycle-friendly, because the streets are the streets. Multimodal. And I think it'll be interesting to get your input, and there might be some other input, but I think it's once again, it's a rather nuanced, looking differently at how you do zoning, and
Well, I think what probably we need to do then is to schedule it. So what are you thinking?
Agenda planning, Denise, what's your February looking like?
So far, nothing.
So the February meeting,
So a presentation? Okay.
What's the date of that meeting?
13th?
Is it
13th.
12th,
I am out
13th?
of town.
And I mentioned, they're doing a presentation. Are you still doing the presentation at Senior Citizens next week? And will that be sort of what you'd be doing for us?
More or less. Yeah, I guess we could gear it towards that.
So if you're available to go to that.
Yeah, when is that?
When is that?
Wait a minute. 13th's a Monday.
Okay, so
Wait a
14,
minute,
oh, it's
wait a
on,
minute, wait a
yeah,
minute,
it's on.
wait, wait, wait.
It's the 19th at 7 o'clock
That's right.
So
at
it's,
Senior Citizens. And that's probably in the great room, I'm assuming.
It's Valentine's Day.
yeah.
Okay.
I don't know.
But I will say that for you folks, this is kind of, it's an opinion, but if you decide that what you want to do is embrace a completely different philosophy around zoning, you are looking at whole-scale zoning reform. You
Yeah,
are
yeah,
looking at
right.
the consultants and the whole shebang.
Yeah.
If what you're doing is if this group is saying, we need these things to change, we need these things to be done differently, we'd like these things to be able to be accessed in these ways, then you can drill down on those things. So if what's being presented to the senior center is a philosophically different approach to zoning, I don't think that's the presentation that this group should hear if you want anything done in 2023, because it hasn't been budgeted for, the time has not been allocated for it. You've made very specific requests in various communications, so I would just drill down on those, because that's what this body can do.
What I'm wondering is some of the, ideas that your group has, you guys have, if some of that can be accomplished through current zoning, but with variances and conditional approvals and all that.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Well, let's see what they got on their presentation, we'll figure it out.
Yeah, I think,
Yeah, okay.
okay.
Well, when's our next meeting?
Valentine's Day.
Okay.
So we also then wanted to talk about Keith Sally.
I might, I mean, you don't know,
Or do
neither do I.
you even know what it is you're supposed to be doing?
I don't know.
That was, I was like, well,
I think
do what with
Gavin
Keith
brought up wanting to talk about Keith Sally. I guess I would like to talk
Well,
about it.
Keith Sally, Johnny's interested, if you do a subcommittee of that, Johnny's actually interested in also serving on that subcommittee because he has some ideas for Keith Sally as well. I think Josue does too. And there's been some issues with Keith Sally, so, yeah.
So let's keep it on your goal list. What I think what we got to do here is,
Put it
do
on
you
the
want it on the goal list? If you want it on the goal list, then what you're going to do at the next meeting is triage it out. Is this going to be addressed by the larger body? Do we send it to a subcommittee? That's what you can do at the next meeting. So we got it. It's in.
Okay.
I do have a question on the Keys Alley thing. Are we phasing out that park there? And if we're not, are we going to consider that in our Keith Alley talks?
You really want to publicly ask that question?
What, you're talking about Baby Hughes Park?
You can't phase it out.
Well, that's what I'm just saying, because it seems like,
Dedicated as a park.
well, I'm just sitting there saying, just seems like I've heard a lot of grumblings about it's not being kept like the way it should be, and I would definitely like to get that on our master plan or on the Keith Alley plan. I'm not sure which way you want to go with that. Well, I just want to know, if would we include that with the Keith Alley plan, or would we put that on the Parks and Rec master plan?
Parks and Rec.
Okay.
item. That's not an alley. That's not an alley, as much as some people would like to see it.
No, it's just,
I hear Keith
my
Alley-
generation grew up in that park.
I hear Keith Hadley just in the conversations. To give you a brief update, we had the Keith Hadley marked today because Wayne, one of the property owners, is looking to make some modifications to the entrance. So, which is something that we briefly talked about at the last planning commission or two.
Yeah.
So
I think I know at planning we talked about it.
yeah, so that's going to move a little faster than we had initially anticipated because one of the property owners wants to do a buffer and wants to pull out some things. So we went ahead and marked it, got it marked today, and you'll see some change happening at the entrance. So I think it's worth having that conversation about Keith Alley overall, just some of the ideas that we have and how we can improve access on that
So
area.
what's the issue with Keith's Alley? I mean,
There's a couple. It depends who you speak with. So there's some of the residents that live behind Keith Alley, and there's Wayne's, who you've heard a lot from. There's the John Cannon apartment building, and Zach got a couple residents. So there's residents that are experiencing issues with traffic, noise, and other things that abuts their residential homes. From the businesses, there's trash issues. One of the property owners complains about parking, not being parking readily available, or the restriping of parking lines. So there's a variety of issues. Some of the things that we think that would improve the situation, some that we're working on, one would be widening the entrance off Corey Street, because we have delivery trucks that go into the Keith Alley, and want to ensure that whatever can be delivered behind the alley would be delivered behind the alley. Currently, we have one business that has deliveries at the front of their establishment on Xenia Avenue, and so every Wednesday they have to put out cones and block off some parking spaces.
So Keith Alley's public.
It is public.
So what normally would happen is the village brings a plan to planning commission and says, here are ideas.
Yeah.
This is our space. We'd like you to vet it. So it wouldn't be planning commission's job to say, let's roll up our sleeves and figure out what can be done with Keith Alley. So I would say, that can be dealt with when it comes, but the village brings it as, here's our plan
The
for
village has these
improvement.
problems, and how
Yeah.
can we resolve it?
And we can do that, and if we get a schedule with enough time for us to draft up some designs and put some things together.
But seeing that it's all public property, what is it that planning commission would need to be doing? What kind of change would require a planning commission decision?
It's almost a courtesy sort of move. It's
Okay.
all right, your job is to figure out what would the repercussions and impacts be of a particular set of decisions. the village thinks these are some good decisions, and then planning commission holds a public hearing, and you hear from folks, and you realize, you know what, that actually is gonna, the headlights will go right into that
Yeah.
apartment, and what can we do about
Okay, so
screening?
this would be the venue for having a public hearing. Yeah, okay.
So-
Especially when you have big projects, planning commission can also help in planning. I mean, in helping them plan these, what's going to go into that. I mean, something like Keith Alley, you're going to have to reach out to those business owners. You have to get buy-in for any change that might be proposed.
And I think that came up because we were looking at, we approved a business that is going to have a front door on Keith Alley. And that's not usual. There may be some other businesses that allow people to come in a door, but it is a back door. And so that was when Gavin was saying, maybe we needed to look at Keith's Alley because is it changing? And if it's changing, then,
So, okay, is it okay if I?
yes.
So when there was a question, I think it was from Riley Dixon at the commission where this came up, where he was kind of saying, well, hey, what's going on with Keith's Alley? And so then I had said at that point, like, well, is that an appropriate thing for us to discuss? So the thing you were just saying, Denise, of the impression I took from that point where we said, hey, let's talk about it at one of these meetings, would be less of like a following. So the village brings a plan and says this is what's supposed to happen. I was thinking about it more as like a sort of small P planning, like a place to discuss, hey, should this be a more vibrant, economic engine, or do we not want anything to happen there, or whatever? So is that, and I mean, I'll just be totally honest, like for me, the reality is I block off 7 to 9 to get childcare every one of these meetings. And most of our meetings don't last 2 hours. So I'm looking at it as like, what are the venues that we can have substantive conversation about the direction of our village? So this was like, oh, okay, well, let's spend an hour talking about what should happen with Keith Alley so that it might instigate some conversation. If that's not an appropriate use of this time, then okay, but that's what I was trying to understand.
If the village hasn't budgeted for doing that stuff, there has to be some level of coordination. And
But how would the village ever know to budget for it if nobody ever brings up that it's a thing that should even be considered?
they already were doing it apparently, so, I mean.
Well, that's
But the idea of like, I guess I'll just, from my perspective, I'm interested in what you think,
Yeah.
but I'm also interested in what other people think, and I could imagine that maybe rather than wait for the village, capital V, to tell us, here's what we want to do, that maybe there could be some people that would say, hey, here's some, and that we could get input, and it could help save staff work conceivably to be able to get input from other people and use this as a space for that input to take place. Again, I don't know if this is outside the parameters of what this body is supposed to do. By all means, speak to it, I guess. But the idea of this being a planning commission where we're thinking about the future of the village. So for instance, one of the things that's not on here that I could imagine this being a venue where we could have some conversation about growth more broadly. Like we've had conversations at council where it's come up at different points. Do we want to grow? Do we not want to grow? How do we think about growth as a village? Where does that topic take place? I could imagine that this might be the kind of place, like,
No, that's
okay.
more council.
Well, we
I'm just asking why. I'm just trying to understand the parameters, that's all.
That's more like
Yeah,
comprehensive land use.
it's comp plan.
Okay, so who does that?
Yeah,
Well,
well,
they just finished doing
we
that.
just did it.
We just did it.
In 2020. Yeah.
So then is it, so just from like a basic decision-making standpoint, and Judy, I'm sorry, like nobody explains how this works before, so like I have to understand the way that the process works, okay?
Well, and you got till 9 o'clock.
I mean, just, I don't like the energy that like I'm not allowed to understand what we're doing here. So the idea that the comprehensive land use plan, I know that nobody, when I started, says, hey, this is the plan, here's what everybody's doing, we're all on the same page, we're doing this forever. So this thing of, it's been since 1998 with the master park plan, it's been since, so what's the process by which we do a check-in of, is this what we actually want to do? And then, for instance, the comprehensive land use plan has tons of stuff in it. How do we decide which things we prioritize? If that's been decided, nobody gave me a memo about it, so I'm trying to understand what my role is in that way.
Yeah.
Well, I would suggest another sit down with Denise first of all, just to talk about, comp plan, how does that fit in? How does it get used? Who does it get used by? Kind of what's its role? The other thing is, you've been real lucky that you hit Planning Commission at a time where Planning Commission was not dealing with senior housing unit or Oberer or a lot of other things that are a huge time suck.
Subdivision regulations.
Yeah, like, it's been non-stop. And so when you figure out what are the goals, if you take on Parks Master Plan, okay, there goes 6 months for you. And that's a lot of meetings and a lot of stuff. And I'm not joking about that. And the same thing happens with if you decide to go down the subcommittees around Keith's Alley and public meetings and all the things, same deal. And if you decide to do any kind of extensive zoning reform, even bigger rabbit hole. So it's not just, well, let's grab some things and talk about them. Nope, you're making a commitment to the entire body for a long period of time. So when you do goals, that's the conversation. Which are the things that we're identifying as goals? Because you're going to spend extra time. You're going to spend a lot of extra time. And you won't always have it during the meeting.
So I'm all for that. I like it. So then let's talk about which of these things do we prioritize. So like, given that, I don't want to talk about the Parks Master Plan if this is a space to talk about Keith's Alley, for example, or if it's a space to talk about growth, then that's above all of them for me. So is this the place? So, and I'll just say, like, I reached out to Denise. Judy, you got the email. I said, hey, these are the kinds of things I'm trying to figure out. And Denise, you said, hey, let's talk about it here. So the reason I'm bringing it up tonight is because I was told this is the place that we figure this out. If you want me to have a separate meeting to talk about the comprehensive land use plan, I'm happy to do that. So can we talk about which of these things really are priorities?
Absolutely.
And talk about which thing, how much time they would take?
We just talked about the zoning reform, about having the group come in February. Is that okay with you, or would you rather us put that back?
No, that's totally fine.
Okay.
It seems like a substantive thing. Yeah.
So that sort of, I guess, it has risen to the top. What do you want as, what does everybody want for the next one? Do we want to get here from the village on Keith's Alley?
So I think the zoning thing, I mean, not maybe a whole rewrite, but, text changes.
Mm-hmm.
I think I'm totally in favor of that. I think that that's something that could help with growth, which I think is something that's, a priority for everybody to, have growth that's appropriate. And then between the park and Keith's Alley, I don't have a preference one way or the other. What's number two? I really would rather not talk about parking again. If
I don't think you need to, actually.
It seems like it's been taking care of itself. So, maybe Keith's Alley is a more pressing thing than the parks plan, but I don't know.
How do other members feel? Scott?
Well, I'm just wondering with Keith's Alley, if the construction that's going to be going in there this year might put that on a back burner, because they'll probably be using that for a lot of dumpsters and stuff like that while they're doing the construction and the demolition and all that.
But that's just going to be for brief. I'd actually say the opposite for that very same reason. All of a sudden, there's a lot of activity going on associated with Keith's.
Right, but this is a temporary inconvenience that's going to be there. That's not going to be something we could permanently make a plan on.
No, but what does become permanent is now all of a sudden there's a business back there. There's an issue with a couple neighbors in terms of the amount of traffic.
That's not an issue they get to have.
Yeah, I'm just saying that that we might be able to delay that on Keith's Alley because of what's getting ready to happen. That it might not be so rushed because we got the front entryway. What you said Josue, did you say that the village is consolidated as far as we own the whole entryway now?
Right. One of the updates from last year is that we acquired the entrance to Keith Alley, and now this year we're going to do two things. One is clear up some of the brush that's in the entrance on the Corey Street side, and we're going to restripe the parking in front of Betty, on the back end of Betty Hughes.
Right.
As we restripe in the back of Betty Hughes. So there's a 24-hour parking lot.
Would there be more parking spaces as a result?
Well, right now, the initial plan is to just restripe the current layout. There is an opportunity where we can designate a waste collection area and consolidate waste collection for all the businesses in the alley, so that we reduce pickups to one company picking up at more specific times, so we reduce traffic, we reduce the noise, and we find some economies of scales for waste collection. And we could possibly, by consolidating those waste receptacles, we could explore organic food collection, so food scraps and stuff like that. So this is throwing out ideas. There's no plan right now being drafted. I will be remiss in my duties to restripe the parking lot without consideration of what innovative opportunities we can execute to improve the space. Among those would be consolidating the waste collection, so that we don't have Republic, Waste Management, and Vance and Rumpke picking up when we got one.
Now each have their separate
Yes, they're
dumpsters?
required to have their dumpsters. I think there's a couple business that share just because they're so small, but majority have their own.
And then if you wanted to consolidate it, that would be then if you were going to consolidate it, then that would be, would the village be paying for it, or would it be all of the shop owners working together?
I think there'd be a fee that we would figure out how to recoup the expense. But right now, our legislation allows us, the village, to provide solid waste services to all the commercial businesses in town.
Okay,
So we're going off on a tangent.
Where we, yeah.
Well, what I was just wanting to get at was, I just think that what's going on is going to end like delaying. Like, we're not going to go in there and try to paint where there's construction. I think the construction is going to actually limit the amount of traffic that's going back there, because people are going to avoid going down there while there's construction.
It's certainly going to disrupt, yes.
So I think we got time with Keith's Alley. What I was looking at, what I was trying to get to, is I'd like to see Parks and Rec looked at,
Okay.
because it's been 25 years.
Okay.
I'm totally game. I love the idea of trying to figure out what our goals are. And then if we want to talk about this, totally happy to talk about it. I don't like the idea that we're not able to have a full conversation on what our
conversation.
priorities
I agree.
are, and then we're
I
digging
agree.
into the specifics of an issue.
Okay, so then just step back, because I think everybody has said something at this point. We are all in agreement that we're going to look at the zoning reform. We're going to hear from the group this February. It sounds as though we would like to have a discussion or get more information from Josue about Keith's Alley. Is that correct?
So I'm interested in it. I guess the question for me is it a priority? So meaning like,
It's not a priority in the sense that there's a budget for it.
I understand.
So there's plenty of time throughout the course of 2023 where this can be discussed
Right.
and some sort of plan put in place.
Right.
And maybe they can budget for it in 2024.
Right. But so let's use as an example. If we're going to talk about things that are probably 2024 things, some of the stuff around essentially philosophy, around questions around zoning reform more broadly, around questions around growth, I would talk about that before Keith's Alley. If we're saying making a list of things that we might want to talk about that would have future implications that cannot be addressed, we do not expect to address in 2023. If that's beyond the scope of what this group is for, I totally understand. But if that, in general, those like bigger picture things are the things that interest me, I'm just speaking for myself, certainly a lot more than Keith's Alley.
Talking about is what? Growth? I mean, that doesn't seem like that's, to me, appropriate.
No.
Yeah, that's
No,
more of the
but
village
you could
council.
certainly say, if village council has prioritized housing, and we are looking at our zoning code, and we know that there are some areas of village-owned land, and we're interested in utilities, and we've done a thing there, you might say, we'd like to ask that a couple of us get on a committee with a couple of council members and other interested parties to talk about, can we address housing in a way that is a little outside the box? Instead of 45 people building ADUs for 45 people, can we look at what would be a parcel where we might be able to get a multi-unit housing complex, where it might be a parcel, so that you're looking outside of a box, because you do have some latitude to say, we've read the Bowen study, we've looked at the comp plan, we've thought about the things, we'd like to join in some of those discussions, and then that would be something that you'd sort of urge council to, hey, if you get to talking about that, we'd like a couple of our folks to be involved.
Okay.
And just to say, part of I'm on council, we don't talk about most of these things because it's hard to find time to talk about them. And because there's expertise, there's interest around these topics, it seems like it's the most obvious overlap I've seen in 7 months of where there might be a space for conversation. So that if philosophy, for example, is a comfortable line, but growth more broadly feels like it's too far, then, okay, maybe we should talk about philosophy then. So wherever the line is, and I can obviously go back to council and talk to say, hey, is this something that council's open to? Is that this might be a space to talk about it?
So the thing you have to approach with caution is you are charged with enforcing the zoning code.
Yes.
So you can't sit at the table and say, yeah, this sucks in a lot of ways. You know, we should change a lot of stuff here because you need to hear people under this code, right? So those conversations have to happen in a sort of carefully warehoused setting.
Yes.
And you know, that's one I just, under the auspices of, council says, do consider these things. A group has approached you and said, consider these things. Then those conversations take place. Spontaneously coming from Planning Commission, that should route through council. If Planning Commission says, boy, we need a bunch more houses, and I think we need to do anything in our power to get more houses, then that goes to council. And if council says, we agree with you, Planning Commission, see what changes you can make to the zoning code in order to accomplish that, now you've done that loop properly. Because if you only have it at council table and you're hearing people who want to do certain things with, it appears like it's a conflict. Because this is your Bible right now until it changes. Not this, I'm faking it, but you know what I'm saying.
We know what you're
Zoning
saying.
code.
Okay, then getting back to what our goals are, it sounds like we have one. And it sounds like we're going to set aside, at this point, maybe till later, Keith's Alley. And we're going to set aside parking. And at this point, it doesn't sound like there's interest in talking about the park master plan.
But there might
Yeah,
be.
I guess it just depends on how much time we have. Meaning, from my perspective, if we've got an hour at the end of every meeting, then we should talk about the master plan.
Okay,
or whatever the next
so the
priority
master
is. And
plan-
if we don't,
We'll keep that on it for if we have time.
And that's one that I would, you know.
And the
if
Parks
we're
Master
con-
Plan, just like the Comprehensive Land Use Plan, is not something that we can just keep moving forward at this level. It really would have to be separate.
A subcommittee.
Yeah, it would
Okay, so
entail
so that may be the-
staff involvement, and
Okay.
it would entail other groups of people.
So let's then maybe look at that after we hear about the zoning, and then consider establishing a subcommittee for the park master plan.
Yeah, and maybe it won't happen this year. I mean, you know.
Yeah, but maybe it will.
Is the park master plan something that's on the village website? Is that something that you can see?
Is it there? It's-
No, I want a copy of that thing.
It was exhibit
Yeah, the master park plan?
to the land use plan.
Yes, we've created sustainableyellowsprings.com, and that has a lot of the exhibits that were part of developing the comprehensive land use plan. So things like the Bowen study, the master park
And
plan.
it was attached to the 2010 comp plan, too.
Correct,
And so-
yes.
Okay, it is.
Yeah, and so the idea of having this website is that it's organic, so we can
So we can look at that.
look at it, add things to it.
Oh, I actually might have a hard copy of it already then, because I've got those plans at home.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay.
What I'm curious about, if there's a simple answer to this, if Johnny thinks that that the park and recreation plan needs some work, what is he finding is a shortfall in it?
You have to read what's there from 98.
Yeah, and I
I mean, it needs to be updated. And then there needs to be what the vision is for improving it even more so, which then ties into planning in some regards, because then the plan then ties into budgetary projects that Johnny's going to want to prioritize, and you have to find money for.
Okay.
Let me ask you, I just thought, would the issues with Ellis, the pond at Ellis Park, would that fit into this?
No, man,
That's sort of that's an ongoing maintenance.
that's environmental commission territory, and I don't want to go there.
So can I just so I think what we're moving toward, it sounds to me, is like, we'll talk about zoning reform in the context of the group that's brought some things forward. And then we've got a list of things that we might address that we can revisit after.
We're taking parking off, and we're also, at this point, taking Keith's Alley off.
So when I said, I'll just say, like, if that's because of what I said, Keith's Alley to me would be one of these topics where if we have time to address it, if there is, I'm still interested in hearing the conversation of what's going on with Keith's Alley.
Well, why don't we wait and see after we
Sure.
deal with zoning?
Yeah,
And
that sounds fine.
The Keith Alley thing
Because the
might
Keith's
be-
Alley thing, in my vision of this, is not, it's going to be a discussion at this table, but then it's going to have to go to another committee level. Because you're going to want to have the business owners involved that are along that Xenia Avenue area. You're going to want their input as well as staff input.
Absolutely.
And so it could be some surveys, there could be a lot of things that could be involved, like you do have for the comp plan. So, but at a much micro level.
But the Keith Alley thing, you mentioned some other things I hadn't thought of. I was thinking it might end up being no more than us getting a presentation, an update at some point. Oh, excuse me. Yeah. Yeah, that the Keith Sally topic might just primarily be us receiving an update.
Well, I think there's probably a lot of things that could be done, and that's why I know that Johnny wanted to be involved, because he has some thoughts about it too.
On Keith Valley? Okay.
Yeah, to improve it, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't want it to just be a report somebody gives. That's what I'm trying to
Yeah.
say, is like, right now, this body is almost exclusively reactive. Is there something to be said for, could we be proactive of, hey, here's how we want to. So the comprehensive land use plan is by far the most significant example of that happening, right? And so then on a day-to-day basis, we do mostly responsive things. So then, but then there are things like, there's not a plan for Keith's Alley, there's not a plan for, so just, if this is a space to talk about it, and if it's not here, then we can look for somewhere else to talk about it, but many of these things don't have a space they're being talked about.
Well, but you also got to bear in mind that having a conversation here and deciding, hey, let's do a whole thing around this, try, the back end of that is, well, quadruple those number of hours for all of the staff, who now have to go figure out all of the things that are all going to have to happen and be presented and all of the stuff. So it's nice to have a conversation, but if you want that conversation to go anywhere, staff have to do a bunch of work, bring it back, and then it gets, so that's why you discuss them as goals. Are they significant enough, important enough? Is there enough money, and do we have enough staff capacity that this is the direction we want to go in?
And the goals that Judy listed are goals that council has already had discussions about. I mean, I wouldn't feel comfortable if you guys came up with, you want to do some sort of plan for something, and we just don't have, I don't see Planning Commission, everything Planning Commission does, especially when it's changes, are recommendations to council, because
Yes.
council has that final authority. So if Planning Commission did come up with an idea that they wanted, it has to be vetted with council first, because council may say, no, we don't want you to go in that direction. So, but these few things that she mentioned here are things that have been discussed at the council level. So,
Okay.
and Planning Commission was charged with, especially like the zoning reform.
Okay, are we clear on what we're doing?
Yeah,
Yeah, we're gonna listen to,
we'll take it month by month.
Yeah, we're going to have the zoning in February.
I think that's going to determine a lot of things.
Yes.
Yeah,
And then okay.
hold off on the other stuff till later, yeah.
Okay, so then talking about the Planning Commission ethics and the zoning code workshop. What do
So
we-
that's, the zoning code workshop, Amy was saying, just hear the group
Okay.
and discuss at the table. She'll be present, and that's going to be a lot of back and forth, asking
Okay.
questions. What can we do? What can't we do? How could it be done? Is it in the code? Isn't it? Should we change it? I mean, you're just going to have a very hands-on conversation during that hearing that I think will cover that. And then if you guys want ethics, sunshine law, brush-up kind of deal, we can schedule that with Amy, looking at about an hour or so.
Okay. And so that would not be at this meeting, it would be separate, it would be a training.
Separate.
Would that be in person or Zoom?
In person. Yeah.
Okay, is everybody interested in that?
The workshop, yes.
Ethics and sunshine law? Updates?
The donuts are not free. That's all I need to know.
Okay, then we'll go ahead and set that up. Okay, if there is anything else that we need to have on our agenda planning? So we have our next meeting.
February 14th, and right now I don't have any hearings
Okay.
yet. I mean,
And so it will
early,
be
but-
the zoning group that will present. Okay,
Actually, I have a couple, just simple questions. So the, whatever changes they're doing with I forgot, the Kinney property off of Dayton, there's nothing needs to come back to us. They're
Not
just-
right now, no.
They're just staging what they're doing.
No, I mean, they're going to go ahead, I think, and put in the infrastructure, and then they'll come back for the final.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Which they can do that in the major subdivision code. So they'll be coming back around April.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then also, the fire station, I heard that it looks like there's a little bit of activity
Yeah, it's moving,
there.
all of the projects are moving forward that you've already approved.
Okay.
The 314 Dayton Street's moving forward, 225 Quarry's moving forward. Yeah.
Yeah,
Great.
but I'm assuming I've heard that they might be doing something a little different at the old fire station, but nothing that needs to come back here?
I'm not aware of that, and if they are making any changes that are considered significant, then they'd have to come back.
Okay.
I've not heard anything to that effect. And really, that's just about the use. I mean, it's not really the planning commission's involvement as far as the renovation of
Yeah,
it.
it might be the same renovation, and that maybe they are rethinking about how to use the space.
Yeah.
So as we get into speculation, let's adjourn first and
Yes.
speculate after, so we probably don't want to do that publicly.
okay, would somebody like to move to close the meeting, to adjourn?
I'm going to adjourn the meeting.
Second?
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, we are adjourned.
Right.
So